I hope that you are well, and I also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today, we'll be doing our grade 6 English lesson on author's purpose and tone. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once you've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of language arts, grade 6. And then we're going to scroll down up until we get to our chapter of author's purpose and tone. All right, so our chapter is author's purpose and tone. Our subject is English language arts, grade 6. And the lessons that we're going to be focusing on is to identify author's purpose, to compare passages for tone, and we are going to say which sentence is more formal, right? All right. So when it comes to author's purpose and tone, right? So an author is a writer, right? So an author is a writer to write books, articles, or anything, right? So an author's purpose is what he or she gives hopes to accomplish within a given text. You can determine an author's purpose by looking at the type of words. So the type of words is phrases and sentences that an author chooses to include. All right. So once again, we said an author's purpose is what he or she hopes to accomplish with a given text, right? And when it comes to an author's purpose, you can determine an author's purpose by just looking at the type of words that he or she uses. All right. So when an author writes to persuade, right? So an author writes to persuade, then they often state an argument or they set a position directly and they provide evidence to support those positions, right? So this is author's purpose and tone, and we see that when an author, when he writes to persuade, right, like persuade you to either do something, follow something, right? Then they often state their argument as to why you need to do it or positions directly, and they provide some evidence to support those positions. Because remember, when you're either arguing or showing some form of position directly, there needs to be evidence, right? Especially when it comes to persuading. People want to see evidence as to why I need to do something, why I need to follow something, right? Let's see. Then they may state the position with words like, so when it comes to author's purpose and tone also, right, they may set the position with words like should, must, best, or worst. And they may include a call to action such as contact your local representative today. Sorry. Right? This is the purpose of the author. And then also, when authors write to inform, we spoke about persuading, and now when they're writing to inform, then they often provide facts. If you're informing someone about something, right, then it means that you need to provide facts, you need to provide definitions, you need to provide examples, and you need to provide details about the history of a specific topic. That is, if you want to inform us about something else. All right. And then also, when a writer tries to explain, so when an author tries to explain, then they break down a concept or they process it into smaller parts or into smaller steps. Right? So we see that when a writer tries to write to inform us about something, then they need to provide facts, they need to provide definitions, explanations, and they need to provide other details about the history of a topic. All right. And then also when a author is trying to describe something, right? So when an author tries to describe something, giving you a description of something, then they often use sensory details to tell what something looks like, what something sounds like, what something feels like. Right? And remember we said sensory is our senses, right? It is to do with looks, which is sight, sound, feeling, touching, hearing, tasting, right? That is our senses. So when it comes to describing something, and then we're going to look at our sensory details where we will be using our senses to tell what something either looks like, sounds like, feels like, or even tastes like. All right. So that is basically the author's purpose, and that is the author's tone, which means that if you as an author wants to write to inform people about certain things, then it means that you need to get your facts in order, the definitions, examples, and details about the history of a specific topic or place, right? When an author writes to explain, then they often break down a concept as to why or what they did, what they do, or to process into smaller parts or steps. All right. So once again, we said when it comes to author's purpose and tone, right, we need to identify the author's purpose. And an author's purpose is what he or she hopes to accomplish with a given text. So a text is given, and now she sees how far she's going to get with it. Right? So you can determine an author's purpose by looking at the types of words, phrases, and sentences that an author uses to include. Right? So now let's go to aplusstudents.ca, and we're going to our first lesson, which is to identify author's purpose. All right. So we spoke about the author's purpose, him persuading, informing, describing, right? Explaining, as well as describing, like I said. And we said to inform readers about Mary's hair salon, right? Or about anything, right? An author's purpose is what he or she hopes to accomplish with a given text. All right. So we see that when a writer tries to inform the readers, we need to know the purpose. He needs to persuade us, to give us information, explanation, as well as to describe why he is doing this or why we are doing this. Right? All right, we're going to read the text and then say and identify the purpose. I went to Mary's hair salon a few months. Oh my gosh, was I impressed. Unlike the hairdressers who pretend to hear you explain what you want and then just start cutting away, Mary realized, really listened. I showed her a picture of the style I wanted, and that is exactly what I got. She took the time to get acquainted with my hair, and she was very knowledgeable. And one of the best parts, it was affordable. For someone whose hair needs maintenance every 6 weeks or so, that makes all the difference. I highly recommend Mary. Now we need to suggest what is the author's purpose of this text, right? So, which means that based on a little article on Mary Salon, all right. So now we're going on to the next one. All right. So yeah, we see it's named after Gustav Coriolis, a 19th century mathematician. The Coriolis effect is caused by Earth's rotation. As wind and ocean currents move across Earth's surface, the planet itself is rotating from west to east. All right. So when it comes to the purpose, right, of the specific reading piece, all right. And if we suggest what the purpose is of this story, right, then it says that named after Gustav Coriolis, is a 19th century mathematician, Icarus effect is caused by Earth's radiation. As wind and ocean currents move across Earth's surface, the planet itself is rotating from west to east. As a result, the currents appear to travel along curved paths instead of straight ones. Wind and water currently traveling from the equator towards the poles bend eastward, while currents traveling from the poles towards the equator bend westward. The Coriolis effect explains why hurricanes spin counterclocks in the northern hemisphere and clockwise in the southern hemisphere. And if we look at the purpose and the author of this, it says to introduce readers to the Coriolis effect. All right. And if we look at the type of sentence, right, then we can say that yeah, the writer is trying to introduce this to the Coriolis effect, right? All right. And then when it comes to the different purposes of a writer is either to persuade the the readers to buy something, it's either to inform them about the reasons as to why they should be buying it, it's to explain why you're either selling it, and to describe it, right? All right. So now let's go to our test. No problem. We now need to identify the purpose of this text. It says in 1968, Shirley Chisholm, I don't know, became the first African American woman elected to the U.S. Congress. Not long after that achievement, she made history again. All right. So we see that in 1968, Shirley Chisholm became the first African American woman elected to the U.S. Congress. Not long after that achievement, she made history again. Chisholm, a Democrat, ran for president in 1972, becoming the first woman and the first African American to run the nomination of a major political party. After losing the nomination to George McGovern, Grissom went on to serve 5 more terms in the House of 1983 to 1987. Shirley died in 2005 at the age of 80. We need to say what is the purpose of this text. All right, so if we look at the correct word that describes the purpose, right, is it to describe the challenge Shirley Holmes faced as a candidate president, or to introduce the reader to Shirley Holmes' political career? I think in this case, it is to introduce the reader to Shirley's political career, because they speak about the political career she stayed on, right, being the first U.S. diplomat or Democrat, right? All right, and that one is correct. All right, so now we need to say which best shows the author's purpose, that is to introduce readers to Shirley's political career. All right, so in this case, is the author pointing out that Shirley made history 2 times during her political career? All right. So if we look at this passage again, it says, is now we need to show the author's purpose is to introduce or the reader to Shirley's political career. It says the author points out that Shirley made history two times during her political career. All right. And if we look at the correct one, we can say that this is an introductory, or let's say the previous one is an introductory to the reader, right? So that the authors provides a timeline of Shirley's political career, starting with her election officer's times, right? All right. And if we are going to choose the correct one, then we can say that this is providing us with a timeline of Shirley's political career, right? Because they're telling us when she started, what happened afterwards, the progress, and so on, right? Okay, so we're going to read this text and then we're going to say which author's purpose is suggested by the text. All right. So we said Call of the Wild has been arranging five-star luxury safaris in Tanzania for more than 20 years. We customize every tour to the particular needs and desires of our clients. Do you want to see the majestic wildlife in Serengeti National Park? Climb Kilimanjaro? Visit Ngoro crater? Do all three? We have the safari package for you at a price that fits your budget. Tame your thirst for adventure with the call of the wild. Our office has a dedicated staff ready to take your call. So we need to say what is the purpose of this suggested that by the text. Is it to describe and explain an African safari or to persuade readers to use Call of Africa service? Call of the Wild services. All right. So if we look at the sticks, we need to say the purpose, right? So here we can say it is to persuade readers to use the service. It's actually to describe the safari, to explain the services that is being used. All right, so now we're looking at the same text, right? So now we need to say which best shows that the author's purpose is to persuade, because we did say that it is to persuade the readers, right? But now, how do we know it is to persuade? Is it the author explains the process followed to customize each tour to the client's needs, or the author urges readers to book your luxury safari today? All right. And here it says that which best shows that the author's purpose is to persuade the readers to call. Here it says the author urges readers to book your luxury safari tour today. Right? So that is persuading, that is pushing the, let's say, the readers to basically book a safari drive. All right, now we're going to compare passages for tone. Right? When it comes to tone and attitude, right? Tone is the attitude that is expressed within a text. A writer's tone can communicate a range of feelings such as excitement, humor, doubt, or respect, and that is within a specific text, right? Tone is revealed through the language that the writer uses within a text. For example, is it information presented through direct statements or through figurative language? Is the topic described through positive words and phrases or through negative ones? These types of text features can help express the different tones. All right. If we look at this passage over here, right, it says it has one excited tone. An excited tone will mean that your text will kind of be like hyped up, right? Because the passage we say that has more than one exciting tone. So it says I ran, and in a minute I had my face under their bonnets. In contact, first with Mary's soft cheek, then with Diana's flowing curls. Hannah asked eagerly if all was well, and being assured that it was, hastened into the house. We walked to the window, and I told, and and I to do the door to see the two Lintons descend from the family carriages, smothered in cloaks and furs, and the earsmith dismount from their horses. Catherine gently took a hand of each of the children and brought them into the house. All right. So here, let's go to our test, right? We're comparing passages for tones. We're going to read the text, right? And then select the passage that has more lively tone, right? It's like saying the exciting tone, more lively tone. The pure black cat is such a noble, gentlemanly fellow, and if well bred and trained, and he is capable of a very large amount of training, he is one of the best and most useful cats you can have in the house. There is no namby pampiness about Black Tom and no squeamishness either. Shush, like a silver flash. The contents of a water jug descended upon the back of the mount, the mothined sandy cat engaged in excavating Mrs. Bindle geranium bed. A curved fellow and Mrs. Sawney's, which is Sandy, had jumped the divided wall between number 7 and number 9 in one movement. All right. So we say that something that is more lively in tone, we can say it is shush like a silver flash, right? So that is more lively, the tone is more exciting, right? Now we need to select a passage that is more enthusiastic tone, more exciting, more upbeat, more hyped. It says, plus Beatrice Blaine, there was a woman, early pictures taken on her father's estate, or in Rome at the Sacred Heart Convent, showed the exquisite delicacy of her features, the consummate art and simplicity of her clothes. Elizabeth was succeeded at this instrument by her first Mary, a sister Mary, who, who having, in consequence of being the plain one in the family, worked hard for knowledge and accomplishments, was always impatient for display. All right. So we need to say which one is more enthusiastic. Let's go with the first one, right? Because it shows the exclamation marks or oh, it's the second one, where it says Elizabeth was succeeded at the instrument by her sister Mary, who having in consequence of being the only plain one in the family. All right, let's go to something that has more of a glowing tone, right? He was fine, tall, slim young fellow of 18 or 20, with black hair, with black eyes, and hair as dark as a raven's wing. His whole appearance spoke of that calmness and resolution unique to men, accustomed from the cradle to contend with danger. So he says he was fine, tall, slim, young fellow of 18 or 20, with black eyes and hair as dark as a raven's wing. His whole appearance spoke of the calmness and resolution unique to men accustomed from their cradle to contend with danger. He gave an impression of deformity without any nameable malformation. He had a displeasing smile. He had borne himself to the lawyer with a sort of murderous mixture of timidity and boldness, and he spoke with a husky, whispering, and somewhat broken voice. All right, so we need to say which passage is more glowing tone, right? Let's say he was a fine, tall, slim young fellow of 18 or 20 years old, or he gave an impression of deformity without any nameable malformation, right? Let's go with this one. He had a displeasing, actually had a pleasing tone. He had a displeasing smile. He had brought himself to the lawyer with a sort of murderous mixture of timidity and boldness. Let's go with this one, right? And the first one is correct. All right, so that is the end of our lesson on author's purpose and tone. Right? Remember, when it comes to an author's purpose and tone, it depends on the reader, right? What the tone is, what the mood is of the writing, right? Writers will either persuade, they will give details, identifications, they will give explanations or describe certain things. All right, so this is now the end of our lesson on author's purpose and tone. Thank you very much for joining the class. Have a good evening further. Goodbye.